This is the Jaguar XE, Britain's answer to the likes of the Audi A4, BMW 3 Series and Mercedes C-Class. And the XE's just had a facelift. So how good is it now? What's new? And is there any reason to choose it over those excellent rivals? Well, keep watching to find out. But before we get started, make sure that you're subscribed to our YouTube channel because we've got loads of great new videos coming up. And don't forget, if you want to buy a new car and save some money, then whatcar.com is the place for that. It's very, very simple. On our website, search for the new car buying section, and there you can browse through our list of deals from our trusted dealer network. So the Jaguar XE was launched to much fanfare in 2015. However, since then, it's not exactly been the major sales success that Jaguar was hoping for, with many buyers just sticking with German equivalents. This midlife facelift will hopefully inject a bit more enthusiasm, motivation and energy into the XE to lift it up and again put it up against those excellent German rivals. So among the cosmetic changes for this facelift are a slightly sportier bumper design, which you can see at the front and generally gives it a little bit more of an aggressive stance, as well as these LED headlights at the front and LED headlights at the rear with a particularly interesting design. And overall it is a crisp, modern, nice looking executive car. But remember, this class isn't really brimming with exciting exterior design, is it? So we want to know, what do you think? What's the best looking executive car that you can buy in this class? Is it the Jaguar XE, the BMW 3 Series, the Audi A4 or the Mercedes C-Class? Let us know by clicking in our poll and there'll be a button or a link popping up somewhere that I don't know where it is right now. However, back to the changes for this facelift, and actually the more substantial changes are inside the car, so we're going to look at those next. So inside the facelifted Jaguar XE, you now get Jaguar Land Rover's Touch Pro Duo infotainment system, which gives you this 10.2-inch screen on top. And on this bottom screen, you have the climate controls, and also what's really good is a space in the middle where if you've connected your Apple CarPlay, it means you can basically still have the navigation on the top screen while controlling functions like the media on the bottom. So that is really useful. And even if you don't have Apple CarPlay or Android Auto connected, it still gives you those two options, which is really useful. These climate control dials are fairly intuitive, but do take a bit of getting used to. So when the car turns on, you twist them to adjust the temperature, and then if you want to adjust the fan speed, you pull this dial, and I would love to have the fan speed on 7, as cold as it would go because it's incredibly warm today, but you won't hear me if I do that. So because I'm so dedicated to making sure that you can hear me, I'm going to put it on 0 and sweat instead. So that's very useful and good to have. However, we still think surely it would just be easier to have nice, easy physical controls for everything. Also new in the facelift is the gear selector here. So previously you had a kind of circle thing that rose up from the ground and then you'd twirl it around to select the gear that you wanted, but now you get a much more traditional and sportier and frankly more intuitive lever here. You also get a thicker steering wheel, and it's also worth pointing out that the previous XE was never one of the best cars for material quality. On the facelifted XE, they've tried to lift the quality of the interior, so the materials are now pretty good, but still the nuts and bolts of it, how well it's screwed together, still isn't a match for its rivals, especially when compared to the Audi A4 and BMW 3 Series. However, this is a little bit better put together than the Alfa Romeo Giulia. Now, the view out the front is fine. You've got some pillars here, but they're no thicker than they are in rivals, so the view out the front is fine. However, the view out the back isn't quite so good because you've got quite a shallow rear windscreen there. There are a few solutions around this though, because as an option, you've got this clear sight gadget here, which basically turns this rear view mirror at the flick of this switch into a camera that gives you a really high res picture of exactly what's behind the car. The slight problem with it though is, and we noticed this on the Evoque when we first saw this bit of tech, it doesn't give you any guiding lines, so it's actually really difficult to judge how far away you are from what you can see. So it's really cool, great party piece, but not especially practical or useful, especially because all XCs get parking sensors and a reversing camera as standard, so probably save your cash rather than ticking that options box. You also have a fine driving position. You actually sit quite low in relation to the window line, and there's loads of adjustment in the steering wheel. It's also great that you have electric adjustment in the seats, so it means when you're on the move, it's really easy to tweak your driving position. And there is no problem with space up front. Even if you're tall, you'll still have room here. There's also a fairly decent amount of storage on offer. In the central cubby, that's relatively deep and a useful space, along with 2 USB ports and a 12-volt socket. In front of that, fold this back, you've got 2 cup holders and maybe somewhere to dump the key here as well. And in front of that, you've got a perfect space for a phone or a wallet, along with some wireless charging too. But what's the space like in the back? Well, the space in the back isn't great. You can see that headroom is pretty tight, legroom is also pretty tight, and to make matters worse, the rear seat bases are really thinly padded as well, so they can get a bit numbing on your bum after a while. And if you want to sit 3 adults across in the back, then whoever sat in the middle seat definitely gets a short straw, because there's this massive hump in the centre here they're going to have to put their legs either side of quite awkwardly. There is a little bit of storage there, but there's hardly enough room for a phone. I've only got an iPhone SE and you can see it's still sort of hanging out the side of that. So if you've got one of those massive new phones, that probably won't even fit. So overall, not really that great. And a BMW 3 Series and an Audi A4 will offer much better room in the back.
Most saloons have fairly limited seating flexibility, and that's true of the XE too. Its rear seats are fixed and can't be folded unless you pay extra for the 40-20-40 split bench. This is a fairly expensive addition, but it does better the 60-40 split rear seats that are offered in some rivals.
As for the boot, well, the XE suffers from the same problems as other executive cars, namely a pretty narrow opening and a fairly shallow load bay, and it's really not that wide either, so big bulky items really aren't going to go in here easily at all. You can still say the same for the BMW 3 Series and the Audi A4, but another negative is even if you do go for those optional split folding rear seats, they leave a big bump in the floor, so even if you're putting really long items in from the back, you'll have to put them in here and then lift them up over the bump of the seats and then push them in. So this isn't the most practical car on sale, but then neither are all of its rivals. However, what does the XE cost and what is it really like to run one? These are the key things you need to know about buying and owning a Jaguar XE. Every XE is competitively priced, and the rear-wheel drive diesel model has low, if not class-leading, CO2 emissions. Jaguar's finance deals could be better though, and resale values aren't quite as strong as key rivals like the BMW 3 Series. Equipment is outstanding, with even entry-level S models getting 18-inch alloys, cruise control, leather upholstery and something else. It's enough to make it our pick of the range. Jaguar provides a 3-year unlimited mileage warranty as well as 3 years European roadside assistance, and you can extend both for a cost. You might wish to do so because Jaguar has a pretty poor reliability record. Service intervals are up to 2 years or 21,000 miles, but there are also fixed servicing plans that cover the XE up to 5 years or 75,000 miles. All XEs come with automatic emergency braking, lane departure warning and a driver drowsiness monitor. And if you go for a range-topping HSE model, you also get blind spot monitoring.
The experts at Euro NCAP gave the XE an impressive 5-star test rating with no major concerns. However, it's worth noting that this was back in 2015 when the XE was first launched, and the testing protocol has become more stringent since then.
So what's the XE like to drive? Well, the facelifted engine lineup is nice and simple, so we'll start with that. You get a choice of 3 engines and they all have 2-litre capacities. So that is 2 petrols and 1 diesel. The diesel is badged D180 and it's our pick of the range because it offers really good performance from low revs and all the way through the rev range really. It's an adequate performer all round. However, it's not quite as strong as the equivalent engines in a BMW 3 Series or an Audi A4. Now we're driving the P250 petrol, which gets 247 brake horsepower, and it's a pretty impressive engine. In fact, it's so impressive that you probably don't need to step up to the P300 to get that extra bit of power, because this is decent enough. Certainly in all scenarios, whether you're in town, whether you're munching through motorway miles, it will deliver. Another reason to stick with the P250 is the gearbox. So you get an 8-speed automatic, and around town it's smooth shifting and doesn't invade too much in the driving experience. But when you want a quick burst of acceleration, then it's really not that sharp. It's a bit laggy and a bit slow, so it can be a bit frustrating. It's certainly nowhere near as quick and impressive as the 3 Series gearbox, for example. So because of the slight lagginess with the extra pace, it's probably not worth going for the more powerful engine because you'll just get a bit more frustrated with the gearbox. It's also worth pointing out that the start-stop system in the XE, so whereby you come to a full stop and the engine turns itself off and then turns itself back on again, really isn't that impressive at all. And in fact, I'm going to pull in here and I'll show you exactly what we mean. So I'm slowing down, turning in here, crashing a bit, and then coming to a stop. And there's just a bit of a shudder when the engine turns off. And sure enough, if I lift off the brake pedal, then again, it's a bit of a spluttery start. Whereas now, lots of other start-stop systems are really smooth. In fact, so smooth that you hardly notice them. But not so with the XE, which is a bit disappointing. But other elements of the car's refinement are generally quite impressive. The D180 is relatively hushed for a diesel engine, although not quite so quiet as a 320d, and certainly not as almost silent as an Audi A4 40 TDI. Predictably, if you go for the petrols, then they are smoother and quieter, and the P250 is pretty much inaudible when you're up at a motorway cruise. Now, if there is one area where the XE really excels and stands out from its rivals, it's handling. If you're after a sporty driving executive saloon, then look no further than the XE, because it handles superbly. It really darts into bends and it stays flat and composed through any kind of twist and turn you could throw at it. It really is very impressive and really entertaining. The steering as well, on the rear wheel drive models, all cars get rear wheel drive as standard, it's really sharp and precise and just makes the car feel incredibly agile in a way that only a 3 Series really gets close to emulating. On all-wheel drive models, the steering doesn't quite weight up with the same consistency as it does on rear-wheel drive models, but it's still very good. However, we'd say, unless you really need all-wheel drive, we'd stick with the rear-wheel drive XEs.
So, the XE is beaten by its key rivals as an all-round package. But it's still brilliant to drive and finally has an interior that lives up to its premium badge.
Go for the D180 if you're a company car driver or if you're very interested in fuel economy. But if you're a private buyer or a low mileage driver, then maybe you're better off with the P250 petrol. For more on the XE, included our extended written review of this car and every other new car on sale, then go to whatcar.com. And remember, if you do want to buy a new car, then on whatcar.com, look for the new car buying section, and there you can browse through our list of deals on every new car on sale to see exactly how much we could save you. And it is very, very simple. I promise you, it only takes a couple of minutes to find out exactly how much you can save.